Vegeta, you have a brother, don't you?
Oh, yeah, I wonder if he got blown up too. Huh, not that it matters.
Dragon Ball does an awesome job at creating brothers that nobody cares about. Starting off with Raditz in Dragon Ball, he came in as really the first villain of Dragon Ball Z, stuck around for a couple of episodes, got killed after a few chapters, and we pretty much never heard about him again. Now, we did see a flashback of him in Dragon Ball Super Broly and in the Dragon Ball Minus chapter, but other than that, Raditz just disappeared into Dragon Ball non-existence. Now, some of you, along with myself, theorized that this small silhouette in Dragon Ball GT when the villains were returning might be Raditz. It's extremely small and horribly drawn, but to each his own. But that's besides the point. Raditz doesn't matter. And when we move on to another character like Future Trunks and Present Trunks, they're not brothers, but the show essentially treats the present version of Trunks kind of like a younger brother to himself. And the interesting thing about it is, if you look at them as brothers, he's just done nothing like his future counterpart did. And when we look at another brother, there's no need to go in depth as to what Goten has not done in Dragon Ball history, because I've already made a lot of videos on this, and you guys have given me a notorious reputation for my Goten hate. But I don't really think it's Goten hate, because there's really nothing to hate on Goten, because what is there to hate? He's nothing. But the point that we're trying to say is, the brother of all irrelevance that tops and comes in as the king of nobody not caring has to be Tarble, because you would think if you're the brother of the second most popular character in the Dragon Ball franchise, we could comfortably say, you'd think that people might have something to care about, but as time passes on, we realize that Tarble was essentially a flash in the pan. If you look at Yo Son Goku and his friends return, there was a small manga snippet for this, and then we also have the anime adaptation, and essentially what had happened is that Tarble came back to ask for assistance in fighting off Abo and Kato. Now, the thing is that because our heroes had gotten so much stronger over the years, Goku and Vegeta essentially thought that it would be a waste for them to fight such weak villains relative to where they were. So the whole point was that they put Goten and Trunks up to the task to fight against these villains. Now, when Abo and Kato fused and started creating a lot more trouble, Goku just basically tells Vegeta, just like he always does, that I'm the star of the show, you're never going to beat me because the writing is always on my side and not yours. And he basically just saves the day in typical Goku fashion. Yo Son Goku and his friends return was essentially a reunion type special. It wasn't supposed to be taken that seriously. Dragon Ball really hadn't had anything that really came into fruition for a while, but the most interesting thing about it was that it introduced Vegeta's brother Tarble, who was a character that we thought couldn't exist because Vegeta has made it pretty clear throughout the Dragon Ball manga and the Dragon Ball anime that there were no other Saiyans left besides himself, Goku, and Gohan at the time during the Trunks arc, and even prior to this, there were no other known Saiyans that were left alive. It's very similar to what we had with Tights, where Bulma all of a sudden just has a relative that we never heard about. But the interesting thing is that the way Tights is written, you can just kind of write it off and say she was in space or, off doing her own things, so it's more believable with Bulma. But because of Vegeta's actual statements, Tarble's a little bit less believable, but one case for Tarble actually having a legitimate reason for not being in Dragon Ball is maybe Vegeta always knew about him and he was just so disappointed in Tarble that he never wanted to accept him as a brother. Because the thing that we have to go back and understand about Tarble, the primary reason why he was never really in the Dragon Ball series, from what Vegeta was saying, was that King Vegeta essentially sent him away. And the key reason why he sent him away was because of the fact that he was extremely weak. And the interesting thing about this is that this is a direct parallel to Goku in a lot of ways, where if you look at his original writing more so than later on, Goku was a weak Saiyan that nobody believed in, had low potential when compared to others, and he ended up being the main character of Dragon Ball and way more powerful than anybody could have ever imagined. He was always the underdog in Dragon Ball, and the interesting thing is that this creates an even bigger question about Saiyans in the Dragon Ball universe. There were a lot of babies that were sent off to other planets because their society just looks at what you are when you're a baby and think that that just caps your potential. But a lot of those fighters maybe could have been something even greater under the right circumstances to get a lot more powerful. Now, granted, Goku went through a ridiculous process to get as strong as he did. I mean, he trained with so many martial arts masters. He literally died and went to the afterlife to come back way stronger. There's so many things that Goku did. Zenkai boosts, theoretical Zenkai boosts, all of the different types of training. But the point that we're trying to get at is that in Tarble's case, unlike Goku, because he's had a very peaceful life, that his power would more likely be capped. And the key reason why a character like Vegeta, who when we first met him was around that tier of an elite-ish Frieza soldier fighter, he got so strong mainly not even because of training, but because of Zenkai boost. Because he just happened to rebel at the right time and got beaten up, but then got beaten up in a way that it would give him a huge power boost. Vegeta kind of lucked into his power. A lot of those Frieza elite soldiers that were above Vegeta were most likely going to stay above Vegeta for a long time, if not ever, until they just died of old age. But Vegeta got that huge spike simply because of Zenkai boost theoretically, and he didn't have access to the level of training that he would have later on. So in a lot of ways, Vegeta's always a weird case because he's a lot like Goku in the sense where he went through a lot of very specific things to get way stronger himself, and had Vegeta simply just stayed under Frieza, never really rebelled, he probably never would have gotten that much more powerful, which is one of the beautiful things about Dragon Ball's writing, where things just happen because they happen, and that's just the way the writing took our characters into this direction. Tarble was briefly mentioned in Battle of Gods, and basically he was mentioned when Bulma was talking about if they could use him to participate in the Super Saiyan God ritual to help Goku become a Super Saiyan God, because they were missing a Saiyan and they didn't realize that Videl was pregnant with Pan, so that was originally their plan. And Vegeta essentially responded by saying that he's far away, like in space and stuff, so he wasn't able to get in contact with him, which shows that for the Battle of Gods movie, Tarble was canon to that specific universe. Now the question is that when you start getting into Dragon Ball Super, it gets weird, because if you look at the anime adaptation of Dragon Ball Super, and I made sure I looked at a lot of episodes of dialogue in the Battle of Gods arc, there was no mention of Tarble in the anime adaptation. Now, if there is some snippet that I'm missing somewhere where Tarble was directly mentioned in Dragon Ball Super's anime or manga, point it out. But I've done a lot of research and I found nothing. So it might be some weird page and some chapter that nobody cares about or forgot. But for the most part, we can say with confidence that Tarble was pretty much never mentioned in the anime version of Dragon Ball Super. So his existence is kind of partial in the Dragon Ball universe. It always kind of depends on, well, what Dragon Ball universe are you talking about? He showed up with his wife, who is a completely different alien-like species to him, and that's his wife, and Vegeta was obviously very shocked to see Tarble with her. Her name was Gyur, and for all of those reasons, it's one of those situations where he's an interesting character only because he's related to Vegeta, but the show really has no reason to use his character. And a lot of us, including myself, felt that when Cabba came into Dragon Ball Super during the Universe 6 tournament, that he was sort of like a subtle replacement for Tarble, because his design is extremely similar to Tarble specifically, and the relationship that Vegeta developed with Tarble felt kind of brotherly, so it kind of felt in a way that the show was replacing Cabba with Tarble, and how Cabba was pretty much like the Universe 6 equivalent of Tarble. But considering the fact that Cabba is a respected warrior that could transform, he just has already done so many things that we've never even seen Tarble do. And Tarble himself isn't even capable of transforming, considering the fact that he's asking for help to fight against Frieza level, or shall I say Frieza elite level fighters by the point of Dragon Ball, where all of these characters were way stronger than this. So ultimately, we can say with confidence that Tarble's probably never going to come back into the Dragon Ball series because the show really has no reason to bring him back. And if they ever do anything with Tarble, it's probably just going to be him asking a character for help, but in expecting Tarble to really be a strong, respectable fighter or to see him get any relevance in Dragon Ball again, he's one of those characters that's pretty much never going to have any shine and will probably be even less irrelevant than Bulma's sister Tights.